Alright, so we reviewed all this code inside of here. Now we just got to figure out how we're going to make our character actually have that run animation inside there. Now, as a challenge to you, I want you to try to see if you can set us up a variable inside of here that gives us access to whatever's going to control the animations. See if you can figure it out just by using your clues. Go on your player, be like, oh, what messes with the animations here? And see if you can figure out how to make a variable for it. This is a little bit more challenging than usual, but if you can figure this out, then you're starting to click how Unity works. And remember, we want access to it inside of here as well. All right, I'll see you in a little bit. Alright, welcome back. Do not be worried if you cannot figure that out. That is okay. So if you look on the character itself and you're trying to figure out, whoa, what runs the animations on this character, there's only really one thing that even looks like it is. This is a transform. We already talked about what that does. It's obviously not it. Sprite renderer, maybe. That could make sense. If you mess with the sprite renderer in the right way, you continuously change what was on the sprite, you might be able to create an animation. It would take a lot of scripting, but it's possible. It's not built for it though. It's not built to continuously change and mess with things on its own. Rigid body 2D, that we already talked about, that messes with the physics system. Box slider 2D, that's what gives the character its shape, and that's what lets it interact with the world. Player controller is what we made, so obviously that's not doing the animations. And that leaves the animator and the sprites. And the sprites is this is actually a shader. That's difficult to explain. We're not going to jump into that right now. Animator, so it's the obvious decision. Alright, so if you're trying to put an animator in there and you're following the same format here, you see on here you can, it's rigid body 2D is what we described it as. We know it needs to be public because we want access to it. So we go public, and then you're like, okay, what do I type in now? Now we know that we're going for the animator, and you see over here, when we did the rigid body 2D, it was just rigid body 2D basically. So you can make a guess and say, okay, it's probably gonna just be animator, capital A. And luckily you don't have to figure it out all that well, because even if you start typing it, it'll eventually pop up to the animator. And if say you didn't get that far, you're like, oh, it's animation, and you went animation instead. Unfortunately, this is a mistake that I know I made at first. Animation and animator are not the same thing. One is this whole class that goes into this whole window and does a whole bunch of things, and the other one is literally just those little files that we made. This is an animation file, and so when you try to make a class that says animation, that's what you're making right there, is this. Alright, so let's go back in there. Let's select our player again, and let's, instead of that, go Animator. That's the class. And normally people just use anim for the class for that. Okay, so if you go over here, you're gonna see in the player controller, as soon as it updates, there we go, it'll say anim right there. We see it on there. We can just drag the player over to this, and all of a sudden we have the player's animator inside of here, because it's smart enough to know that when we drag this over, we obviously want the animator. We have access to the animator now. Now we want this animator to play the correct animation. How do we do that? Well, this is where things get real, because we're going to be bouncing back and forth quite a bit. You see, if you go into your animator window, which again, if you do not have access to right now, if you go to window, you go to animation, and you click on animator, it will pop this screen open for you. Now, if you go to this animator window, you see that run has nothing going to it. There's no way for the game to know how to, when, at what point do we make our character look like he is running. So let's figure this out. You can right click on idle and go make transition. You drag it over to run, and all of a sudden we do have some sort of transition. Now when you're doing sprite animations, you want to click on this arrow thing right here, and it'll mess with the transitions. So in the 3D world, they'll actually almost like mix the animations up, and they try to do the same thing in the 2D world. When you're doing sprite animations, you really don't need it. It makes things look worse. So you want to click off this exit time. We'll go down to settings. You want to go fixed durations, not happening, and transition duration you want to set to 0. That way it just goes instantly from the idle animation to the run animation. You don't know what that means right now? That is okay. Do not worry about it. Just follow that for now. We will dive more in depth in that because we're going to do it like 15 billion times. All right, so from this, we're going to go backwards, and I want you to set it up the same way as a quick, really fast challenge. Try to set it up the same way I just did the other transition. I'll pause it now. Okay, so if you click this arrow right here, click off exit time, you go into settings, take off the fixed duration, 0 here, okay? 3 things. Now, we have the run animation set up because we made it earlier, but there's no way for this system to know when to switch. This arrow right here says, okay, I need to go from the idle animation to the run animation. If you click this, it goes, okay, when do I do that? It figures it out based on this condition window under here, right? What we want to do is we want to set something up here. So if you hit plus and you look, oh no, it's empty. There's no parameters. Where are the parameters? Over here on your left. If you look over here on your left, you can make a parameter. It might be on layer. If you're on layer, click on the parameter button. Then you want to hit the plus button. Now, normally we do this in a little bit more fancy way, but for now, while we're first beginning, we're just going to mess with a Boolean. We're going to go running as its name. We're going to use all lowercase words for this game. And so now we have a running Boolean, right? If you click here in this conditions, you want to click on this arrow one more time, you want to click conditions, you want to go running. While running is true, it'll be in run. If it's true, it will transition from idle to run, right? And then if it's false, we're going to transition from run to idle. So you click on this arrow, you go over here into conditions, go in running, make sure this says false. So if running is true, idle goes to run. If it's false, run goes into idle. Okay? To demonstrate how this works, let's do something like this. Let's run our game. You see that right now we're inside the idle animation, right? If I hit this button right here, making it true, boom, we're running. See? Idle, running. Idle, running. All of a sudden we have access. So the system does it despite what code does. You know, if this button right here gets pushed, basically, he goes into a running state. Okay? That's pretty important to know. So what we need to do in that case is we need to make that checkbox happen, make it true, make running true, without actually going in there and physically pushing it. We need to be able to do it through code. And we need it to be based on when we do an action inside the game, when we're pushing a button and making the character move. And we already have 2 spots where that happens. We have a spot over here where he's moving left. We have a spot over here when he's moving right. You see? So, alright, so now that we're inside the code screen, let's actually make it so the animation runs at this point. So, in this left side, we're going to go anim dot, getting our animator over here, dot set bool. Now, if we had made a different kind of parameter, like say we had made a trigger or something, then we would be using like set trigger, or you can also set integer and do something different. It depends on what parameter you set. In this case, we're setting a bool, right? And if you can't, code in general tends to use get or set a lot in the code. It's pretty common practice. So if you can't remember what it is, just start with set. Just start with set, or you can even write in bool. Start writing boolean, and you'll see different functions in here for what you can do. So anyways, for now we're going to just say set bool. And this will let us set that Boolean that we were talking about earlier. Now, you see in here saying int ID. Well, we don't know what the int ID for that Boolean is. So if you hit this, you see it says 1 of 2. There's 2 different ways that you can go about it. And you can click between them to see what they are. A common practice is used to name, and then you set the value over here after the comma. You see it's telling you that? Like, it's saying basically, oh, you want to set the Boolean? Well, here's how you go about it. you gotta give us the int ID, and then you gotta give us the value that you want to send to, true or false, because that's what all a Boolean has, is either true or false. So if you, but then you're like, I don't know the int ID, so you push the down arrow, you're like, is there something else I can do? He's like, okay, alternatively, you can actually give us the name of the Boolean, and then you can give us the true or false value. All right, so then what you do is you say, okay, well, I named it running, which you can see right in here, running. You gotta make sure it's spelled right, it's capitalized correctly, everything has to be right there, same amount of space, everything, or else it will not find that thing. Hit yourself a comma, and then you go, okay, and what value do I want to have? See, and in code, true and false are very magic words. They have a very important value. They actually have either 0 or 1 as the value for it, and a Boolean automatically only has one of those two values. That's what a Boolean is. It's a container for either true or false. So it says, okay, you gotta pass me in a Boolean value, and we say, okay, you're gonna be true. There you go. And then we're gonna go over here, and the same thing's gonna happen, right? Copy and paste it, because we want the same animation to be running inside of there. We're gonna go back to our game, test this out. Oh, I accidentally hit the play button twice. Don't do that. And we're idling, and we're running. But we keep on running. We never go back to idle. And we also jump and run, and we do all sorts of things. Okay, so we got it so he runs, but he's not doing everything that we wanted. He's never going back to idle. He never doesn't run. Well, part of the problem is because of how we coded this. You see, right now this says, if this is happening, then you do this. If this is happening, then you do this, right? So, right, there's three things that you can use inside the if world. Basically, there's three different versions of if. There's if, else if, and then else. They are what they sound like they are. So we're going to actually show you in code right now what they do. Now this runs basically how the language sounds. If we're pushing this A key, this stuff's going to happen. If this is not happening, then we'll check if the D key is getting pushed. That's what else if means. So if this is happening, this will happen. Else if this is happening, we're pushing the D key, this will happen. And else we'll do something completely different. Okay? That's if else. They're kind of the heart and soul of code. So this is pretty important. If, else. Okay, and now the code's smart enough to know to keep in a row. You see how I push this right here? It doesn't highlight this last if because that's not part of that same sequence. You know, so like this if, this else if belongs to this if. It only checks this else if this is not true. And this else belongs to the same thing, and it's only run the sequence. Now this is pretty important, so I'm going to repeat it one more time. If this is true, if the A key is being pressed, then we'll do all this. It doesn't check to see if the D key is being pressed unless this one's false. If A is not getting pushed, then it'll check if the D key is getting pushed. Okay? And then if the D key is getting pushed, it'll do this. However, if the A key is not getting pushed and if the D key is not getting pushed, then it'll do this. It'll automatically do this if both of these things are false. In which case we want to do anim.set bool running to false. And you can see, ta-da, whoosh, whoosh. And as you can see, we are now running around. Again, not absolutely ideal, but it's not too bad either. All right. So, we definitely still need a lot of work. Like, we're not like supposed to be running in the air. We're not supposed to be air walking like this, or idling in the air for that matter. We need a whole nother animation for that. But overall, not too bad, right? For now though, I think this is pretty good. We've been able to set up the animations inside of the code and get it running. And as you can see, he is now a living, breathing character that is not only just idling, but he can run around, and we can actually affect that through the code. That's pretty cool. So remember to, well, if you liked the video, please hit that the like button below. If you want to continue to get these tutorial videos, please hit the subscribe button. You can hit the bell notification and it will let you know. Other than that, I thank you very much for being here with me today, and I hope that you have the best day, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye.